YouTube, it's Alec with Get Decked, EDH. Today we're going to talk about how to better tool your decks. So essentially, I run into a lot of issues mostly when I play Spell Table, and that's people having slow turns, not knowing what's technically in their deck, how to play it efficiently, what cards to tutor. You'll have a long time where someone will just be spent thinking. And I feel like that downtime really slows the game down and can even falter some people. So essentially this video is going to be about how to play your decks better, how to get your cards you have in them more efficiently placed, synergizing better, and how to practice essentially. So how I practice my decks is it starts with the concept. And the concept be whether their theme, a certain color I want to build in, or, you know, anything that has to do with the foundation of what I want to build. And then I like to go from there. So to start that, usually I use Moxfield if I'm on my computer, or if I'm out and about, I have an app called Mana Box, which I think is awesome. And it's definitely great on my phone. At least it's easy to see, easy to read the cards and do everything. You do have to pay like I think it's like $3 to get the full setup in which you can play tests without a time restraint. But besides that, I'll put those links down in the description so you guys can get access to those. But I usually use Moxfield, so I'll start by showing you guys how I go about that. And EDH Rec is a good place to get ideas, look at cards, see certain themes and colors that you want to play with. So usually I'll go start with there. So let's get it going. All right, so here we are on EDH Rec. I'll also post that. I'm sure it should be a pretty well-known site at this point, definitely if you're already into Commander. But let's start, say I built an Acererak the Archlich deck recently, which is mono black. So I would go to Acererak, get up his page, and there's a lot of cards here, and these cards are all great. They have the synergy rating and everything you need to know, but I don't want this to be like your whole world. There's cards beyond this list and what they show here that could work for the deck you're trying to build, especially if you're trying to go into a certain niche that isn't, say, popular, because you can see here all the tags that we have, and zombies is the most popular, combo, and then dungeon, storm. I went with the combo when I built mine for specific reasons, but so I'll go to, say, combo, and I'll then scan through this and I'll look at the cards and see how they read and if there's any I don't recognize. So that's why I usually come on here, is because you might have a card that's not really popular in normal format, or it's like it's not a standardized card. It's very specific to the deck you're kind of build. So sometimes it's good to come on here just to see if there's something you've missed in the past or that you can't think of. But generally I use this, and I'll use Scryfall or even Wizard Gatherer, even though I really dislike that site. I think it's fairly inefficient. But I'll try and go through here and get a general idea of what I'm trying to build. And after I see what the deck's about and I get myself on board with it, I'll then switch over to Moxfield. And this is usually the first page you're going to see. If you don't use Moxfield, that's fine. Some people use Archidec, or even I think Goldfish has something that you can use. I think that's where the term goldfishing came from, which is essentially we're going to play test. So I'm going to go to your decks, and these are the few decks I have up on Moxfield. Uh, this is my page, which is under the description on my channel page. I can leave that in the link as well below. But so let's go to free spells with dungeons. So this is my Acererak deck. And so when you get the concept down, you want to put this into, say, Moxfield or Mana Box, and then you can start really fine-tuning your deck, because this is going to tell you, one, how much it's going to cost, two, you're going to get all these stats, which are really important. It's honestly good to know your mana curve without having to do the classical paper way of laying it down on your table. And so I'll go through here and I'll see what I got and what I have chance of hitting on curve, what's my main mana production. And this part is important because say you have two colors. I'm using mono black because this is just a deck that I built recently. Um, but say you have like two colors, you want to really pay attention to how much you are able to produce. So let's take a pause on Azrak real quick because this is important. Let's go to my Yoshi and Kedis deck. So we go down here and we can see that 52% of 60, what is this? 52% of my non-land cards are, so 34 out of 66 are non-land cards are white. So, and the amount of mana production I can produce is 59%. So 20 out of my 34 lands produce white. And then we go over to red, and 23 out of 66 non-land cards are red. And it gives you all the charts here, and we have the colorless over here, but that's pretty unnecessary because you're going to be able to use that regardless. And then my 17 out of my 34 lands produce red. So that's a decent ratio. I have 3 more ways of producing white essentially. And that works. It works for what I need to. And when I went through the play testing of this deck, I really fine-tuned to make sure I could hit my goals. So essentially, this is actually maybe a better deck to show off just because of how this plays out. So once I get all of my cards input and everything's looking good, you can always check down here to see what's going on. It looks like I'm actually missing a card, but go to playtest and we get to this screen. And now this screen is where it gets, honestly, this is where you're going to spend a lot of time. You're going to spend a lot of time here. I'll spend probably, honestly, I'll gear box or test the deck for maybe like a week or two before I even think of ordering anything. And these cards could come and go. I might swap these cards out for cards I already have in my collection that are one cheaper. I'm not having to, because some cards are honestly really expensive. So you don't need all of your haymakers, but you can buy those over time and upgrade your decks. So I get this opening hand and I'm looking at it. And with Kedis and Yoshi, my goal is always to drop Yoshi turn 1. And I want to do that with a basic land. I want to do a plane. So this is perfect. Obviously draw for turn. Awesome. That's a better start. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it back. I'm going to play my planes. I'm going to tap 1. I'm going to cast Kedis. Yoshi. I keep calling him Kedis for some reason. And then that's my turn. So over here you have this whole list. You can do the whole turn cycle. I think Moxie was awesome. I honestly play it on Spell Table. We'll get to that in a second. But I'll go to my next turn. So why I'm doing this is because I'm not only learning the cards I just grabbed from a website or wherever I found them and place them onto this. I am now looking at the cards I have, and I'm able to take my time and methodically play out how my triggers go down, how everything is essentially stacked in my turn. So I'm ignoring the fact that there's no one else playing with me and that I'm not being interacted with, and I am just playing my turns as efficiently as I can. So turn 2, I drop Sokkenson, Crucible of Defiance. That's a legendary permanent. Yoshi gets a counter. Great. That's what we want. And then I can look at my hand and I can drop anything if I think it's important. But right now, all this stuff is geared up to my next turn, which is this Seething Song is honestly going to put a lot of work out. But first, I'm going to tap 2. I'm going to cast Kedis. So now I know what my turn 1 and turn 2 could look like. This deck, it's very straightforward. It's almost the same. I very rarely miss out on playing Yoshi turn 1 unless, like, say I get a Soul Ring or I want to really manipulate a turn, or someone's waiting to remove Yoshi the second it hits the board. Because in my play group, this deck does have a villain vibe to it, and it gets targeted quite often. So I play Kedis. I get my counter on Yoshi. Yoshi's a 3/3. Generally, someone's going to be open. I know that. So I'm going to play as if someone is open, and I'm going to swing Yoshi. I just dealt 3 damage to one person. Kedis is going to trigger. Yoshi's going to respond with that trigger and deal 3 damage to each other opponent that wasn't dealt combat damage. And then that's that. That's my turn. I hit my next turn. I'm keeping an eye on my counter over here because depending on what power level you're playing in, you want to be winning. Obviously, you're not being interacted with right now, but you want to be winning by at least like turn 6 or 7 if you're running through 7 or 8 power level, which is obviously a suggestive term. Power level is really tough to pin down nowadays, but I would put this deck at a strong 8 because it starts strong, but it can be, once it gets kind of stopped, it slows down. So I'm on my next turn. I have a legendary permanent or a creature, so I'm going to play Mines of Moria. That'll knock me up another counter. Woo, that's what we want. Now I have 3 mana available to me. Now I have to do some thinking because I can tap 3, cast my Seething Song, which will then get my Hammer of Nazan out, which honestly is great for keeping Yoshi protected. I want him to stay alive. And I know this because I've practiced this deck, but this is something you're going to learn in the early stages, or you won't learn because you're not going to know how much of a threat your commander or whatever cards you play are going to be perceived as. So I am going to, though, tap 3 and cast a Seething Song. Add 5 to my mana pool, cast Hammer of Nazan. It has an ETB trigger. It's going to attach right to Yoshi. Yoshi has a trigger as well, getting me another counter. So this is turn 3, and I have a 7/5 commander who's indestructible. That's a huge threat. People are going to be looking at me. Swing with Yoshi again. I deal 7 damage. Kedish triggers, 7 elsewhere. It is turn 3, and I've dealt a total of 10 damage to each opponent. And I can now phase out my next steps. So usually in a normal game scenario, during other people's turns, you have time to think about what you're going to do and what you're going to play and what card is going to come next. And you can adapt that strategy as things happen. So if something, I want you to like focus more on your board rather than other people's. And that's what this step is all about, is knowing your deck. So I play Yoshi, turns over, things happened, damage has been done. I'm definitely getting a lot of ire at this point. I go to my next turn. I just drew a flawless maneuver, which is huge because that could potentially protect Kedis. And so I have 4 mana available to me. I have a Danitha here. I don't really have any artifacts or equipment spells that I need to cast right now, so there's no real point in casting her. 8.5 Tails, though, is a different story. So I know I need to get protection out, mostly for Kedis at this point, because Yoshi's looking pretty good. He's got indestructible, he's chilling. So I'm going to cast White Tails. I only have 2 red mana available, and I know that looks bad because I could have cast Gimli and then left open a white mana for this God's Willing. But I know if I don't draw another white, I can't get 8.5 Tails online next turn. So I'm focusing early on protection because I've learned that this deck is going to be targeted. But say you didn't know that, you would want to really focus and keep in mind when you're practicing other people. Like sometimes I'll even say, oh, Kedis got removed last turn. And then try and work yourself through that scenario. And Kedis is gone. Do I get Kedis back out or do I keep plugging forward on building my board state? And that is a decision you're going to make on the fly. But if you keep practicing your decks, and you can keep mulliganing this too, you can keep going. So like this hand right here, same thing. I'm going to keep this hand. I have a Norn the Wary, and in this deck, that is a slam dunk. That's going to get me at least 4 counters per rotation, and that's insane. So I'm going to keep this hand. I have protection right here from the Stagiary's Shelter. Like, that's pretty solid. So once you go through this, and you feel confident in your deck, like you can hit your library and you know exactly what you're looking for, you know what you're trying to get. This is important too when it comes to land searching. Say you have a tap land and you already played dual land earlier and you're not sure if you have another one. Knowing your deck really helps in quickening up the pace of what you're looking for and the fluidness of that turn essentially, because the quicker you are and the more able you are to focus on all your triggers that are happening, the better you're going to be in the long run. And so once we're done all of that and we've practiced the deck and we feel really confident in it and feel like we can really get into it, we're then going to order cards. And when we order cards, we're going to get them shipped and then we'll have our deck built. And then that is when we get to the physical part of it. And before that, though, I want to make a note. So with Moxfield and Spell Table is an online way to play Magic if you don't know. You can use a webcam or you can use your phone or you can use Moxfield. A lot of people aren't. You'll notice if you go on Spell Table, a lot of people will say no Mox, and that means no Moxfield because they want to play with people playing physical cards. But sometimes you need to play test a deck because you're not sure how it's going to work because a lot of it relies on interaction. Like, real quick, before I move on to the next segment. Let's say we go to, what's a good one? Like Gornog. Gornog, this is a deck that I'm currently testing and going to build soon, but Gornog is extremely aggressive. I am playing warriors, I'm getting them out, and then I need to get Gornog out as ASAP as long as an opponent has a creature in order to make it unblockable. But I can't experience the potential of this deck. I can do the motions and get the value going and see how the play patterns will work. And I'm just being hypothetical and thinking that everyone has at least one creature. But I can't truly test this deck and how it works unless other people have creatures, because Gornog reads, whenever one or more warriors you control attack a player, target creature that player controls becomes a coward. Attacking warriors you control get plus X plus O, where X is the number of cowards your opponents control, and cowards can't block warriors. So I can't test how big these guys can get unless I have other players. I can guess and make an estimate, but I'm not sure. So you can always use OBS Studio is a great way. I'll link that below as well. I'm not going to go into how to play Moxfield on Spell Table. There's other videos that people have made for that. I don't need to go over that. But I highly recommend making your own lobby, saying Mox friendly, and you are then able to play test Moxfield or your deck on Spell Table with other people. And definitely once you've practiced playing on Moxfield, you'll get more comfortable with doing that. But that's another way that's a step in the playtesting. If I'm not 100% sure on how the deck is going to work without players being able to test it, I will use Moxfield and Spell Table. And then beyond that, once we get the physical cards, like I was saying, we will go to that. All right, so here we are. We got our physical deck now. It's all built, sleeved, ready to go. This is the Azrak that I just built. And so this deck was actually really important for me to test because it's all built around abusing Asarak's ETB ability, which reads, when he enters the battlefield, if you haven't completed 2 move Annihilation, return him to your owner's hand and venture into the dungeon. The last ability doesn't matter because I'm not even focused on it. What I'm focused on is looping a dungeon. I'm not going to be doing 2 move Annihilation. I'm going to be doing Dungeon of the Mad Mage. And that is a multi-step dungeon, which I have a crudely drawn template of it, mostly for Spell Table. It's easy to see. And so I needed to play test this deck because I have to go through a total of 7 floors. And this is why this is important, because doing it digitally is going to be significantly different than doing it on paper. So once I get the deck, I'm going to then practice it. And this is the same old shtick. I'm going to shuffle, just like you're playing a game, just like you were doing on Moxfield, except you're doing it for physical. I'm going to shuffle up. And the whole goal of this deck is I really tried to tune it around taking advantage of all these rooms and being able to choose which room I need depending on the situation. So say I need mana to cast Azrak one time, I'll enter on the 3rd floor, create a treasure, or I'll do, say someone keeps swinging at me because I keep spamming my commander, I can make one creature not attack me until the next turn. And obviously I plan on abusing this and using it to my advantage, all for the means of drawing 3 cards, revealing them, and then casting one without paying its mana cost. That's the whole goal behind it. But essentially allow me to dig for the combo pieces. And I'm going to go into more detail about this deck when I do my 5-color monocolor challenge video and tell you why I chose for my mono black to do combo, because I feel like it's very fitting for the color. But it was a quick loose shuffle, do a quick cut just like a real game. I'm going to pitch that to the side. I'm not trying to find a god hand. I want to be able to practice with every situation that could possibly happen, which is the unknown. So even if I go down a hand size, I will mulligan even if I'm goldfishing or play testing. So I get my hand. Let's reveal it. So same shtick. I'm going to take a look. I have 3 lands available to me, which is a pretty good start in this deck. I I'm running a lot of high CMC, but once again, I'm casting a 3-drop commander, and that's the important part. So I know I have Massacre, which allows me to deal with some early time threats, and I'm going to keep that around. I have a Phyrexian Tower, which I'll eventually use to abuse the 2 skeletons I'm going to create. And I have a Bubbling Muck, which is a way to generate more mana. So for first hand, this is pretty safe. I'll keep it. Especially if I'm not trying to spook the table with becoming the threat too early. So say we go turn, we would draw. I draw Cabal Paladin. I'm going to play a Swamp, and that would be my turn, and I would pass. And how I keep track of this is usually I'll keep a little die right here, D20. And I know this is turn 1, and I just pass to my turn 2. So I can eternally know how I'm doing through the turns, and I will reflect on that number and decide if, say, oh, I am really slacking, or I need more card draw, or my deck is not generating enough mana. And these are the decisions you're going to realize once you've been playtesting this deck so much is what is my deck missing, what does it need, and what can I do to make it better. This isn't just about playing with speed, it's about realizing your faults and strengths. Because I can say, wow, I have plenty of removal. I'm like, do I need that much removal? Do I run into needing that much removal? And I can go from there and have some real tough conversations with myself about what matters in the deck and what doesn't. But anyway, you get the gist. And by playtesting this and understanding the strengths and weaknesses, you're then going to be able to efficiently play your deck, know what you need in certain scenarios, and also know if you can't solve a problem. Say someone has enchantments. They're playing an Enchantress deck. You are in mono black. I have Withering Torment in this deck. I don't even have a Feed the Swarm in here. I know I'm not going to be good at dealing with enchantment removal. So I'm going to try and bolster my other strength, which is creature removal. So I run a lot of one-sided board wipes in this, which I hope to hit with my alt. And that's just something that I, through playing it, realized that I would need. And it's not like I ever have a big creature presence that I wouldn't be willing to put a global board wipe, but say I have one of my combo pieces like Defiler Fleshout, or say a Yara. I want those to stick around. And now you can see I'm also running Snow-Covered Swamps, which means I have like a Blood in the Snow. But besides the point, playtesting your decks are so important. And it really helps me, say, when I go into my first game with a deck, it's really not my first game. I practiced that deck like 50 times. I know the whole ins and out of it. I'm ready to play. I'm not guessing. I'm not wondering. And I did most of that learning without other players, which is the important part, is that you yourself can do this on your own. And then, obviously, I, once again, highly recommend Spell Table. I love Spell Table. I love testing my decks on it. Honestly, I'll build a deck, and if I don't want to wait for my play group to meet up, I'll go right on Spell Table, and I'll test it for 3 times in a row, like just like that. And it's a really efficient way to learn and also play with decks that are outside of your play group. And it gives you a better understanding of your power level, which is super huge because you don't want to be going into a game with a too strong deck or too weak. You want to be kind of comfortable in knowing where you sit on the power scale, which is once again a tough thing to do because it's very subjective. But besides the point, this is how I play my decks better. And it's really helped me be efficient with my turns, my mana bases, and essentially understand what I need as a player to feel engaged in the game. And all my other opponents or people I'm playing with aren't bored waiting for me to sit at and look at my cards while I think about what to do. Because you got to remember, you have 3 turns after your turn ends, or even before it starts, to look at your cards and understand what you're doing and what you're going to do, which is also super important. You want to be studying your hand. You want to be reading your cards. You want to know your next 2 moves, what your next 3 turns look like. And playtesting helps you do that because you know what to expect, what you want, and what you need. So hopefully that's a little bit helpful. Alright guys, that is all I have for you today about how to be better at playing your own decks. I hope you enjoyed some of this information. Sorry if it was a little all over the place. I kind of just freeballed this one. But still, it's all valid info. I'm going to leave all those links in the description so you guys can access them and use those. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'm going to be making my monocolor challenge video shortly. Just still working on the kinks. I want to make that a little bit more structured. Um, but thanks for taking the time to watch and listen. I hope you guys have a wonderful day and take care. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe.